everybody, and welcome to The Backline with Rob and Adam. My name is Adam Colley, alumnus of the Second City Main Stage.
And my name is Rob Norman, author of the cool improv book, Improvising Now, a practical guide to modern improv.
Robbie, it's been a bit. How are you?
I'm well. I'm doing very, very well. It's nice to see that the fake laugh at the beginning of these episodes are going strong.
I guess that's more for the YouTube viewers, the audio-only listeners. It's a way to get in. We've got this countdown on our recording platform, and Rob says just hold a smile for the first few seconds because we need that to get in there or something like that.
Never said that. Never said you need to smile.
Well, you're like, don't talk right away. Like something, you just look. And I was like, just look. That's Rob's bland performance style. Just look directly at the camera. Don't do anything. And I was like, I feel like we need some sort of action that we're welcoming the audience into. And that is my laughter. Because as people know, I am the funny one of the duo.
Right. And so, yes. So definitely not your shame at all. Definitely not the fact that you can't sit in the silence. You definitely have to put something in there because when someone comes to a podcast where people aren't really funny on the podcast, they're just talking about how improv works. There's nothing funnier and more welcoming than seeing someone pretend to laugh silently as the episode begins.
Again, proof that I am the funny one. Rob, tell me, what is going on in Toronto? You're doing lots of shows. You're doing lots of fun. What is the latest?
I'm doing lots of shows and I'm doing lots of fun. That's the update for me. It's a magical time here in Canada where everything gets very crisp very quickly. There's still leaves on the tree. The leaves don't know that it's Christmas time yet, but everybody else does. And so I'm excited for this big transformation. Christmas comes fast here. So it's like, cool. It's, November, and November's about to end. It's December. It still doesn't feel like Christmas. And then like December 10th, it just hits you. There's like a wall of snow. The lights are all up. It's a very special time, very exciting time if you live in Canada. For you, it probably feels pretty weird. You're in Los Angeles. You're like, oh my gosh, the palm tree has a light bulb. It probably doesn't feel the same at all.
There are definitely moments, especially in the afternoon. Like it still gets dark here at like 5, but there are moments in the afternoon where I'll think like, I wonder what I'm going to do for 4th of July. And then I'm like, it's November. Right. I'm confused because nothing changes here, I guess, other than a little bit of the temperature, but it's just like, yeah, it's very the same. So you do get confused about what is happening and what time of year it is. But that being said, lots of shows happening, which has been very fun. And something happened the other night that I thought, I'd like to talk to Rob about this.
Uh-oh.
Because I don't know if anyone listening is in the Los Angeles Hollyweird area, but so many of the theaters are tiny, right? Like if you're in Chicago and you're doing something at, IO or even the annoyance Second City, like there's massive like physical spaces so that if you need to go down a hallway, if you need to find a training center classroom, you can just go and find your own spot. But in a lot of these LA theaters, it's kind of the room. You've got the room, maybe a curtain and a little backstage. Maybe your backstage is outside. And I was doing a show, and then I was doing a different show, and I was like, this has really changed the dynamics of an improv warm-up. Because when you're at a lot of the theaters in Toronto, it's like, oh, you've got space. The theater's in one area. Well, if your team's on next, well, let's go to the other room. Let's go down the hallway. Let's go outside and let's warm up. Even in winter, we've got spaces that have room to go warm up inside. But in LA, it's a little different. If you were to warm up loudly, you're going to ruin the show that's currently on stage at that theater. So I wanted to talk a bit about improv warm-ups. It seemed like we would always do it. You and I would do it with Mantown. You and I still do it with Arn and Calls and our duo show. And I didn't know how many people still do this. Bree Watson, who's a great improviser from St. Catharines, Ontario, near Niagara, brought this up a while ago too, and now experiencing it, I'm thinking, do we need a warm-up? What's the benefit of a warm-up? So I wanted to bring this to you. So Rob, what is the purpose of warming up for an improv show?
I have some concerns about warm-ups. When we were students, we would warm up at the beginning of every class. It was part of the curriculum. As I became a teacher and, especially when we're talking about very complicated technical stuff like game of the scene, for example, I was having trouble fitting everything that we needed to talk about within those 3 hours. So I just dropped the warm-up. And the classes work just fine. And so I was thinking to myself, well, do we need this warm-up? What is the warm-up actually for? And someone, Lisa Merchant, who's a great improviser here in Toronto, taught many of the folks in our generation how to improvise. The way she described it was, a warm-up is an opportunity for your students to shake off the day before dealing with a challenge. And so basically what that means is you work at your office job, you're in your cubicle, your boss yelled at you, you feel bad about yourself, you feel shame, you're depressed, you're walking into improv class. Well, it might be cold tub, hot pool to go from that to now play a fancy chef. You're like, I'm not ready. I'm not ready to play a fancy chef. I'm still mad at my boss. So the warm-up is low stakes cleansing of your real life so you can now participate in the fantasy properly.
I think that is a fantastic way to think about it. I think with Merchant, the Merchant seems to be specifically referencing classes, right? And that's what you're talking about too. Because for me personally, the idea of leading a warm-up as a teacher, I hate. So what I started to do back in the day, I haven't taught in person very often in the last little bit. I keep getting these rejection emails, which is crazy. It's like, no, we don't.
Because you're not even applying. That's weird.
You don't have the skills that we want. You're quite offensive. All of those things.
And this is coming from your mom and dad. That's nuts.
They do not want an improv workshop, especially with the divorce. What I started to do actually, before we get into shows, for classes in person, especially for kind of the more advanced classes and classes that would be around together for a while, like a conservatory where you were together for a year, is I would assign people weekly warm-up responsibilities. So one member of class, it's like, oh, you have to bring in 15 minutes of warm-ups for the class. And the reason is, A, I hate warm-ups, but B, once you're out into the real world, you don't have someone leading the warm-up for you. If you're on a team and you want to warm up, you either do that alone or you're the one who has to corral people and say, hey, everyone, let's do X warm-up. And then let's go to Y warm-up and get the team pumped. Because your coach isn't going to do it. Your teacher is definitely not going to do it. So I thought that was a nice way to handle that, of getting people used to leading warm-ups, getting them to research what are some good warm-ups, and then having them kind of be their own mini coach for 15 minutes and just get their feet wet in new responsibilities. That in itself, for the classroom, I get way more than a show. Because I think once you start getting into shows, you're dealing with, unless it's your team, you're dealing with people that may have different views on improv. They may have different times they like to get at the show. Some like to get there early. Some like to show up a little late. Others feel like, this is my 4th show today. I'm bouncing around theaters. I don't need a warm-up. I actually need a rest. So I'm curious about, what do we do in that situation? Should there be an expectation for warm-ups? Or should it be, no, if you want to warm up, go outside by yourself and do a solo warm-up? What do you think? I guess it's like, should there be improv warm-ups before a show?
I mean, the question that you're asking is, should there be organized fun? And that's a personal question. You show up to a party and you go, okay, guys, we're all going to go around and we're going to do this now. Like, do you like that? Like, some people love it. They're like, I don't have to worry about it. I don't have to worry about socializing. This structure protects me. Other people are going, I find this really condescending. I don't want to participate in this. You know, it's interesting, too, that improv attracts a certain kind of person. Like, for the most part, historically, I would say, it is people who are collaborative. It is people who don't have much shame, who do like organized fun. Those are things that they are passionate about. So in that regard, that's kind of the status quo of improv, that you would do some kind of warm up before going out on stage. You and I, we've talked about this before on the podcast, but I do have some challenges here. I do think there is some kind of bad faith that happens with these warm-ups, that they become almost addictive in a weird way. Like the idea that we're going to say, I got your back, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Like these are activities that are meant to build energy. And for most people, I would say energy is not the problem. Maybe you and I need to build our energy before we go on stage because we're tired and we're old. But for new improvisers, the idea that I'm going to get you revved up and then go out on stage to do your first scene, probably actually not what you need. So the only person who's able to figure out what you need is you. I need to stretch my hamstrings before I improvise. Not everybody needs to do that. Some people need to do vocal warm-up. Some people need to work on their articulation. Some people need to run through little characters or little scenes. Some people need to get their brains firing, and they're doing word association. It's, you know, there's no warm-up that's a kind of one-size-fits-all. But I guess if you're newer to improv, then having someone organize that piece, if you don't know how or that you should warm up, is maybe better than nothing. I don't know.
Yeah, it is interesting as you go through your career, at what point do you need a warm-up, right? As you said, like, you and I probably are coming from somewhere else and need to get our energy up. Newer improvisers, they may have too much energy, and they need a place to put it, because I'm nervous before the show. I'm actually kind of, my hand's shaking a little. I need to just, like, clap focus real quick. Like, I need to get in sync, because I'm feeling like I'm floating away from my team right now, because I'm so in my head. I'm so anxious that I just need to maybe look at each other and be like, you got my back, right? Like, I'm about to do this, and my aunt and uncle are in the audience, and this guy that I like is watching the show. Like, what do I do? You might need that. But before we talk about that, or maybe we can do it in concert, is what are some of these warm-ups, Rob? Like, what are some classic warm-ups that either you've experienced or you like to do? And maybe talk a bit about, like, what is the goal? What are they trying to provide with these warm-ups?
Sure. So the most obvious one would be clap focus. The reason why you do clap focus is because you don't know any other warm-ups. I can't see a single reason why you would clap focus before a show. Like, to connect with each other? I don't know. The reason why you do clap focus as a teacher is because it's a very low-stakes game that you can't screw up. So it builds confidence. If you're about to go perform in front of people and you're using clap focus to build confidence, you're going to have a tough show. I'm telling you right now. Ain't going to be an easy one.
I agree. The one thing I will say is if the clap focus, so basically if Rob and I are in a room, we look at each other, Rob would literally clap his hands and point to me, and that means I've got the energy now. And then I would do the same thing. I would clap my hands and point to Rob. That's basically it. The other thing you can add to it is names. Great. We're just kind of, maybe it's a group that you don't know. You get to know the names by clapping toward and saying the name. The one I will say is kind of fun for a warm-up is when we are in a group, we're in a circle, and the goal is I have to clap and send the energy to Rob while looking at Rob in the eye, but I have to say any other name than Rob. It is very difficult, especially if you go fast, and there is something nice about, either a team that's been together for a while or a team that doesn't know each other, that's kind of been put together, to have a quick laugh beforehand, because you're going to fuck up. And I think there is something nice of connecting on that level of, God, I don't know you very well, but, oh, you fucked up my name. Oh, what's your name again? And just having a little connection there.
Yeah, and you know what? Like, I kind of flippantly said, you don't know any other warm-up games. And if you don't know any other warm-up games, I mean, maybe this isn't a bad one. Because the question is, too, if you're not going to warm up your team, then what does your team do before a show instead of the warm-up? Do they talk? Do some people talk and other people feel excluded? Do we make fun of each other? Do we create a kind of like toxic energy before we go on stage? Do we drink lots of alcohol? Like what goes in place of that warm up? And if that's the case, then maybe it's not so much that the warm up makes a better show, but the warm up protects you from other bad behaviors happening in the green room.
Yeah, the separation before a show, I think, is the thing that bothers me the most. Is if we are all backstage or we are all hanging out and someone just kind of drifts and just starts chatting to other people or at the bar. Obviously, you might see someone you know, blah, blah, but just communicate that to the team. Try not to make it a big deal of just like, I'll be right back. I just got to say hi to this one person. I think feeling like we're about to take a big risk. We're about to step on stage and try to connect, and you feel like you're kind of half in. It does feel a bit like, oh, are you going to take care of me? Are you going to support these ideas? Or are you kind of, this isn't a big deal to you? Even if it's not a big deal, you committed to this show. You've said you're going to do the show, and now you're kind of half-assing the show. And I think this is where we get into this a good question is, if you're not warming up, what are you doing?
Yeah, and I think maybe you and I take it for granted because we were forced to warm up before shows. We just know that you hang out with your team. We know that you stay as a kind of crew together. You want to create a certain kind of feeling, and maybe we don't need to play a game to do that. Like we've kind of we understand what it's for, and now we can circumvent that if we don't we're not in the mood or no one's in the mood. Because I also feel like warm ups, and you and I experience this on the road a lot. You're on the road, AC. You're touring. You're playing with another group of people, or maybe you're just sharing the same show, and they look at you and they go, "Hey, we're going to warm up. Do you want to do it with us?" And the answer for us is always, of course. Of course we want to warm up. We don't want to warm up. But of course we want to warm up with you. You're playing Clap Focus? Of course we want to do Clap Focus. But that feeling can sometimes feel a little bit like you're the oldest kid in the family and the youngest kid doesn't know that Santa Claus isn't real. And they're saying, we got to get ready for Santa Claus. And you're like, of course. And you don't believe it. But the fact that they're so excited about it, it allows you to remember what it was like to be excited about Santa Claus. And sometimes that's how I feel about warm-ups. You show up to a town and someone's like, we're going to do Mind Meld. And I'm like, I would never do Mind Meld if it was like my own decision. But the fact that we're doing it, I'm actually having a blast. This is actually really fun and really cool.
So,
Anyways.
go on.
I was just going to say, you asked me to name more warm-up games, and I stopped with Clap Focus.
Yeah.
So I just mentioned Mind Meld right now. This is real simple. You and I, we put our heads down. We count to 3. 1, 2, 3. We say a word. We're going to do it right now, Adam, because it's better if we demonstrate. You ready?
Okay.
1, 2, 3. Strawberry.
Park.
So you said I said strawberry, and you said park. Now we're looking for what's in between these two separate ideas. What's between strawberry and park? Here we go. We're going to put our heads down. 1, 2, 3. Field.
Orchard.
Close. Okay. So what's between an orchard and a field? An orchard and a field.
I'm ready.
Here we go. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Farm.
Yay!
Yeah, that's how we do it. So our job, we get 3 tries to try and get the exact same word. Did you actually, was that a delay or did you actually say farm?
Oh, no. When I was like, I'm ready, I was like, it's fucking farm for sure.
It's farm. Yeah. Great. So again, like that game, will that make Adam and I perform better tonight? Absolutely not. I can't see a single world in which us playing that makes us do anything that we wouldn't normally do. Besides, maybe giving us a little bit of confidence. Oh, we got farm. Oh, we're really connected. And then we'll go on stage, and then the first scene will happen, and we'll realize, oh my god, I don't know Adam at all. We're in different universes. This is crazy. So cloud focus, mind meld, that's an option. There's like countdowns where you shake one part of your body, start with your right hand, and you count down from 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Go to your left hand, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You go to one leg to 8 to 8, and then you go to 7, and then 7 and 7, 6, 5, 5, 5, until you all get down to 1, and that creates a kind of energy because the numbers are getting lower and lower and lower. Things feel like they're moving faster, so it feels like a kind of arc, a climax happens. Yes, again, counting to 8 maybe could be helpful if you have low energy that day, but I wouldn't say. I don't think I've ever counted to 8 and anything good has ever happened. The actual warm-up games that you and I actually do would be a pattern game, which is a word association game. So we start with one word and we go back and forth. We get as far away from that word as possible just by associating. And then our goal is to kind of return back to that word. The reason why I like word association as a warm-up, it helps me. The first time we do it, I do feel very clumsy. And then by the second or third round, I actually feel like ideas are coming to me quite easily. Also, I like the idea of before a show begins, in my back pocket, I've accidentally invoked like 60 ideas. And so we take our suggestion and we go, apple. But I've already come up with 60 ideas that I don't know about yet. They're in my subconscious. I've kind of like, the pattern game drags them all to the surface and they're kind of floating around in my brain. So I'm never stuck for something to do or never stuck for something to talk about in a show. So pattern game is an actual game that I actually do use that I think actually does make me a better improviser.
And this kind of feels like what we talked about off the top, which is kind of curating your own experience, right? If I bike to my show, do I want to do a physical warm-up? No. But if I sat at an office all day, got into my car, drove for an hour to get to the show, then maybe I do want a physical warm-up. So this is the kind of thing of like, well, depending on your day, depending on what kind of person you are, if you need a warm-up, curate it. And we're going to talk a bit more about that after the break. And we're back with another fake laugh. So, Rob, we think about the kinds of shows that you and I would do and the kinds of warm-ups that are available to us. Let's say you're doing a show and your partner hasn't arrived yet. I got to warm up, though. You got a solo one. You talked a little bit about me and you doing our duo kind of warm-up. And then you're on a long-form team, and you're about to go on with your team. Are there any differences that you can think of if you want to get these 3 options warmed up based on the kind of show you're doing or the kind of group you're performing with? Would that change your idea of what kind of warm-up you'd want to do?
Yeah, I mean, like, I feel like warm-ups really are about connecting. So if I'm just by myself, there are warm-ups that I'm going to do that don't have anything to do with anyone else, which is I'm going to probably like stretch out my body. I might do a couple like fake characters that I've never done before just to get the bad scenes out before doing the actual show. I might do a word association game by myself. Those are things I can do on my own. If I am playing with a big group of people, my goals are a little bit different, especially if I'm like not part of the group. So
Which
like
you rarely are, like socially, your family says that, stuff like that. So
yeah, and that's mostly just my personality, right? Mm-hmm. But the idea of like I'm visiting. Well, the thing I want to do is like I want to do 2 things. I want to feel part of the group, and also I want you to know that I want to be a part of the group. That's important. Because if I'm going to tag into your scene, I don't want you to think of me as a kind of like hostile interloper who's here to mess up your thing. I want you to think of like, oh, this is the guy who's really kind and really nice and really funny. And if he's messing with me or he's doing this move, I know where it comes from. It comes from a place of like joy and mischief and kindness. One of my favorite memories of all time is we were in Copenhagen. And when I say we, I mean the royal we, because you definitely weren't there. I was by myself for this trip. And I was doing a show. And every time I come back to the Improv Comedy Copenhagen, it always feels completely different. There's always like new people and new troops. And I saw our friend Mia. And Mia was like one of the people that I knew, and we get along great. And we're kind of hanging out in this courtyard. And people are trying to figure out like what's our warm up going to be, and for whatever reason, there's this metal mesh above the courtyard. Beautiful courtyard, by the way. So there's this metal mesh, and we noticed that above the mesh there was a dead bird. I guess a bird had died; it fallen into a window. And so for some reason we got really into the idea of like someone, you had to stand under the dead bird for like a certain amount of seconds. And so like this was like, it was like stand under the dead bird, and you'd stand underneath, and then you would stand there, and then like we got really into this idea, and so people started taking risks as like looking up at the dead bird while they were doing it. Sometimes they would open their mouth underneath the dead bird in case something fell in. Like a very silly childlike game. We are literally in grade 6 right now, but that was like such a legitimate fun memory. It did everything that the warm-up was supposed to do. We laughed so hard at this stupid, silly thing. And this wasn't organized fun. This was the opposite. It was kind of like, it was the chaotic fun of you stumbling into something and creating structure out of being bored and having nothing to do. So that's a really good example of like, for me, thinking about what I want to do in a group. I want to do something silly and authentic, and I'm with you. I'm not better than you. I will also stand under the dead bird and open my mouth for 30 seconds, no problem. Like whatever makes us laugh, whatever makes us happy, and whatever makes us feel like connected. Now, I'll say one thing before I hand this off, which is just burns are sometimes a big part of pre-show rituals, and we got to be really careful with them because they don't always translate into the kind of connection that we're hoping for. Like sometimes, like if you're really tight with groups, those burns can be a sign of intimacy, and you and I would burn each other before a show quite a bit.
And Rob, just to clarify, burns being kind of teasing.
Yeah, they're insults. They're insults.
Yeah. Positively, with a well-meaning inside friend insult.
Yes, and we talked about burns before on this podcast, but burns only, like you talked about the idea that you made a joke, which is very funny, that I'm never a part of any group ever, which is great. But the only reason that joke works is because I don't actually believe that you think that. I don't actually think that you think I'm a pariah. Or if you think I actually am a bit socially awkward, it's not enough where this is like a debilitating character flaw that I have that needs to be addressed.
I know you're not sensitive about it. I know this is not something you've said. Please don't mention this again.
Right. Yeah, and our boundaries for us are very clear. It's actually like for you and I think like maybe in our 15-year friendship, we've had like 3 or 4 moments that were little blips where it's like, actually that hurts. And that's instantly shut down, and that never happens again. And we're very sensitive to that stuff. But when you have a kind of shorthand with someone and you have a new person joining, you have this problem. Because I go, the way I warm up with Adam is I talk about his bristly broom-like haircut. How long has he been in the Army? 0 days. But he has the haircut of a guy who's been in the Army forever.
Oh.
So we're doing that. That's really funny. And then Peter shows up. And Peter's brand new. And we go, hey, Peter. Adam's a piece of shit. Well, what do I do? Do I rip on Peter? Well, I don't want to rip on Peter. I don't know Peter. But also, if I don't rip on Peter, he's not included. Okay, hey Peter, you smell like shit. Like I don't know. Like what do you say to a stranger? Like it's very tricky. So burns are maybe not the best warm up or pre-show culture, especially if you have people coming in and out of the door. You probably want to create a different kind of energy for your crew than that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, part of it is like there's no time to break anything down. If someone actually does feel a little like, oh, I should clarify that boundary, or I should clarify that that's not something I want to joke about. Before a show, there's probably no time. And so you go on stage with this baggage of like, fuck, like, I'm kind of pissed at this person. So anyway, long story short, let's avoid that. But on that tip, are there any downsides to warm-ups that you can think of? Reasons that you'd say like, no, I don't want to warm up today.
Yeah, there's lots of downsides to warming up. First of all, the time before a show is limited. What do you got before you actually go on stage? 15 minutes? Maybe you're a very litigious theater company. You're getting there 30 minutes before the show. Well, you're going to get your stuff. You're going to settle your stuff. Maybe you need to get a drink. You know, maybe you got to change into your show clothes. Maybe something goes wrong. Maybe we have to redo the lights. Like, sometimes it can be quite hectic. I recently just teched a show, and I was there from 7 till 8. And I had to cut things because there was just too much going on. So if I've gotten my bike and I rode there and I did a full stretch because I was really worried about my hamstring. I don't know why. I'm just really worried about my hamstring. And then we go do our group warm-up, and then we do 15 minutes of physical warm-ups to get my energy up. That's not good. Now I'm double warmed up in one area, and I know I need to warm up something else. I need to do word association. Now there's no time. So yes, that's a downside. It can put your resources in poor places. I also feel like there's a kind of bad faith where it's like the idea that we tell new improv students that you just walk on stage, you're with the group, you just say yes and it all falls into place is a lie. It's not true. It's never been true. It is not a helpful superstition to have, to believe that the improv gods look favorably upon people who collaborate and therefore they reward you with funny, interesting scenes. That just doesn't happen. So the idea that we're going to do this warm up and it's going to fix all of your problems before you go on stage is also very unhelpful. Maybe that time is better suited you figuring out what your goals are for the show. Maybe your time is better spent walking to the back of the house and seeing, oh, there's 3 people here. They're all wearing MAGA hats. Okay, we got to adjust what our show is, you know? It's like these are other things that we might think about doing in the show, other things that we might need. It also might be helpful, like to think about maybe there's someone in our cast who needs our attention. I did a show maybe 3 or 4 months ago, and I had the worst day I've ever had in my life. My worst day since the lockdown happened, and I was in rough shape. And usually, like before a show, I'm cracking jokes, I'm ripping on people. I was not in that place. And so that was a show where probably I needed a little bit more attention. And I needed people to be like, hey, should we unpack something before we go on stage? Or like, are you okay? You don't want to talk about it? Cool, here's how I can support you. Like there might be moments where our cast needs something other than counting down from 8 in a more hurried fashion. There might be other ways we can use our time.
And that's what, an option is, like a check-in, right? A good check-in of just physically, mentally, how are people, anything that we want to share with the group. And that is a nice way to connect, also for everyone to feel heard. And we're not really requiring too much of a demand in terms of physical or vocal warm-ups or anything like that. Rob, let's say that you have been asked to guest on a show at a prominent theater and you're very excited. You don't really know these people. but everyone kind of knows each other. You show up and you're like, ooh, love to get a warm up in. And you kind of see everyone else and they're hanging out on the couch. Some people are on their phones. You're like, huh, I guess this group doesn't warm up, but I could really use one. Any thoughts on what you might do in a situation like that?
What I would do or what one could do?
What are some options for people with varying levels of comfort, varying levels of need? What are some options for folks?
For me, I would just go get it myself. So I would just go to a separate room and just start warming up on myself. If that's not someone else's jam, I don't need anyone to warm up. I'm good. But if I'm someone who wants the connection with other people and I need to do it in a group, I would just phrase it this way. Hey, folks, I don't know if you guys warm up or not, but I would love it if someone would someone mind warming up with me? Like, it's a weird thing, but like I need to warm up before every show and I feel silly doing it by myself. Would anyone help me out? And I can't imagine a world where everyone doesn't leap to their feet and immediately support you. I would just phrase it as a need that I have and leave it pretty open. I would make sure that if I am asking that I have a warm up in my back pocket.
Yeah.
To start.
I just had this thing. Sorry, everyone. Before show, I need to warm up, and I also need someone else to lead it, and I kind of need someone to come up with it. Also, I got to go to the bathroom, so can we do it later?
And then you tell me I did a good job afterwards. Thank you so much, guys. I appreciate this
so
much. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to depend on so many different factors, but as always, you have a request, you can phrase it politely, and the worst they will say is no. And if they say no, you always have the option, as you said, to kind of go do it yourself. If you can hear that leaf blower outside my house, absolutely illegal. Please get a broom. But no, they love their leaf blowers. It's such a funny thing because it's just blowing it like onto the street so often. And it's just a huge thing of like, here, you deal with this now. If you have to interact on the street, now you have all of my garbage. Anyway. Rob, final question for you. You and I, we've been very lucky. We've been all over the world doing improv, warmed up with a lot of groups in a lot of countries. Any warm-ups that you can remember that are kind of, that you discovered internationally, that you stole, that you really enjoy, that not everyone may have access to?
That's a really tough question. I'm trying to think. I mean, truthfully, the warm-ups that have blown me away have been the ones that were made up on the spot and then never played again. Like, there's no way for me to show up to London, Ontario and be like, guys, find me a dead bird. Like, it's just not going to happen again. But like stuff like 5 things, where you name 5 things. 5 things a snowman smoking a pipe would say. That was a game that we found in North Carolina. Mind Meld was a game that we found at another theater company. And these were probably standard games elsewhere, but to us in Toronto, that they were brand new. So while I can't remember anything novel or new right now, I do recognize that most of the best warm-up games you stole from somewhere else.
One that I participated in, my God, 10 years ago, that I still like to do in classes and stuff, but no one has ever heard of it, is Clingy Priest. Have you heard of Clingy Priest?
Is it emotion plus job?
Yeah. And it's basically, it just is, if I'm player A, you're player B, I just combine an adjective and a noun, basically, and it's like, well, if it isn't the shy bodybuilder. And it's an endowment warm-up, so then, Rob, you quickly snap into your version of a shy bodybuilder, give us a few sentences, and then you turn to the next person. Well, if it isn't the blank. And that was one that I found so fun, especially as a warm-up for people that are, maybe still getting to know each other, because endowing or gift giving, I think, is a fun way to suss each other out. Of like, oh, what makes you giggle? What do you find challenging? What do you enjoy? And when someone endows me with something, it does feel a bit like a stab at figuring out who I am and what I might have fun with. And I think that's always been one that I when I saw it, I was like, huh, this is fun and fresh. A fun, fresh take on kind of world's worst mixed with gift giving. And but since then, I've never heard anyone else talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, I've never really thought of it as a warm up. I know that like there are a lot of game of the scene instructors who use it as like kind of a core principle of what they're doing, thinking of like, oh, here's my character, and then the adjective kind of becomes the pattern that you're playing. But I do like it as a warm up. It's very simple and it seems like a lot of fun. I also love those warm ups that teach you something and you're not aware that you're being taught. I like those warm ups a lot. Like Clingy Priest, what you just described. You're instructing someone like kind of how to play game, how to create characters, how to do an endowment, and none of that is in the explanation of the game. It's just very simple. You just go well, and put these two things together. Oof, my level 5 improv class is going to be very happy to play their new warm-up game.
Well, Rob, this was a great warm-up to start our podcast. So you ready to begin?
Yeah, I'll hit record.
Okay. Rob, anything on stage, off stage that is exciting you right now?
Oh, is anything on stage or off stage exciting me? You know, if I'm going to get a sandwich, I'm going to eat the whole thing. Mm-hmm. There are some people who get a sandwich and they eat half it and they go, I'm going to save it for later. And I always go, you're weird. That's a weird thing to do. But I realize when it comes to playing video games, I am a play half and then save it for later. For some reason, I don't know why. I feel like I should be a really big gamer. I should play a lot of video games. For whatever reason, it just never took. I don't know what it is. And you don't play video games either.
No.
Weird. What's wrong with us?
I can, like, my God, my whole childhood was video games, but the last system I bought was Nintendo 64. And then, I mean, did I buy it or did Santa buy it? And then the other systems, like you gave me like a PlayStation 3. Mm-hmm. My wife's sister gave me like I don't even know what it is, an Xbox. And like I'll play it for a little, but especially now, I'm just the idea of like you got to connect to the internet and sign up and have a thing and you buy different things for your game. I'm like, I just like the idea of I got a half hour. I'm going to pop in this game and play it. Just to get the game started took me like 20 minutes.
Right.
Yeah,
like the downloads and uploads. Mm-hmm.
I can definitely see how fun they are. And if someone like a Nintendo Switch or something that seems very simple, I feel like I could really get into. But it also like, I think it's like, oh, I'm aware that like opioids exist. But if I jump in there, I might never come back. That's what I'm thinking about video games. I could see myself just falling into a trap and then just spending hours and hours and hours doing it.
Yeah, I don't think video games are like opioids. I don't think they're the same thing. No.
All right.
Anyways, I don't know why you brought up drugs. That's crazy, Adam, at the end of a podcast. Jeez. I was just going to talk about Assassin's Creed and how much I like that franchise, which is like based out of Montreal. And so I played the first half of their Viking-themed one, Valhalla, and I got like 10 hours in. I was like, yeah, this is good. I took a break, and then yesterday I fired it up again. Whew, it's nice to be back. And I like it because I also feel like I'm learning.
Like history or?
Yeah.
What do you
like
learning?
there's like, well, I mean, this game is basically, it takes place during the Viking raids. So like prior probably to the Norman conquest of 1066. This is like the first Danes arriving on the shores of England and raiding these little English abbeys and villages. And you can read about those raids in a book, but it's very different than experiencing it. And you see all the people and you're holding the axe. So it's cool. It's a really cool experience, and I feel like I'm getting some value added as opposed to like walking through a made up alien planet and just firing my laser gun at aliens. I actually am like, oh, cool. I'm in London. That's awesome. This is what London looked like during this time. It's exciting.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong. You're playing as the Viking, or as the Vikings, and they did some bad things, didn't they?
Very bad things. And the game itself, like, raiding is a huge part of it. So you're literally going into these small little abbeys, killing everyone, and then lighting the houses on fire. And so, morally, I don't agree with the actions of my main character, but also I'm like, well, this is what happened. So I would rather understand it completely than kind of whitewash over it. I think they did a really good job with this game.
So you enjoy doing terrible things to people in the video game?
Wow. So like, my last name is Norman. My people did conquer England in 1066. I think it's okay to explore my heritage, but maybe you don't. Maybe you're anti-Normans, and that's okay.
Yeah, I'm more into Mario Paint. I went to a, I guess you call them raves still.
Yeah, I saw.
I went to see my boy Andy C, a drum and bass DJ in LA. And you know what? Had a bit of a bummer time. I've been following this guy for 20 years. Favorite DJ, love this music. And the other night went, and I had this weird feeling of like something's changed. All of his mixes, if you never heard drum and bass, it's literally what it sounds like. It's electronic music, primarily drums and bass. But that's like the underlying feeling to every song. But then on top of that, you have kind of like the chorus of the song. You've got the mood, the soul, and it could be something like Steel Pan or like hard Terminator 2 style, like but I love it all, and the variety is what makes it so fun. And then when watching someone mix these two individual songs together and create this third new thing, that's where the artistry comes in for me. But it was as if I turned on like the latest, like Christopher Nolan would be how I describe this DJ. And Christopher Nolan's just like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to do the next Fast and the Furious, or I'm going to do the next Transformers. And from start to finish, it was just the hard part of a song into the next hard part of a song. And it was just explosion after explosion after explosion. And I became numb to how hype he wanted us all to be. And it was a really bad feeling. I was like, is this over for me? Or is this just a one-off where I didn't like this one show? And I found myself last night. I was like, no. I like this still, right? And I put on old tunes and I was like, yes, I do like this. But it was a very odd feeling to be in the middle of something that you've loved for so long and be like, I'd like to go home now.
I mean, I think one key part of this conversation is that you rave sober. Like all of your raves, all of your love of drum and bass happened without you doing any substances. And I can imagine you, was it last night or 2 nights ago, having a couple brews, getting into your Uber, showing up, being like, seems like this is just a lot of stimulation. Where's the plot? Where is this going? And everyone else around you's like, oh. So I wonder maybe if, some experiences aren't for you. I wonder if this experience wasn't quite for you.
Could be. I'll have to give it one more shot and see where it lands. I'm hoping that there's a resurgence. But you know what? Just a lesson for all those out there. You may have a moment like that where you feel like you can't go home again. Bummer.
Yeah. Can I say one more thing before we end the podcast?
Please.
Is when you said this, I thought it was a huge bummer. I don't know why, but I thought you were trying to make the beat drop where you said, oh, it's a complete bummer. Actually, it was great. Like a drum and bass song. That's what I was
That's very
picturing. It's
funny.
like, okay, he's going to come up now. But anyways.
When is Adam going to drop this conversation? Well, you know what? I'm actually very curious. We say this at the end of every podcast, and the messages we get, we always appreciate. So I'd love to know, like, what are people's thoughts on warm-ups? Do you love them? Do you hate them? Have you refused to do them? Or are they mandated at your theater, your community? What kinds of warm-ups are you into? What have you learned? Have you piecemealed one that's an original? I'd love to share it. So you can always reach out to us at The Backline Pod on Facebook and Twitter, at The Backline Podcast on Instagram. This podcast is brought to you by the Sonar Network. And if you liked our podcast, please subscribe. You can let everyone know how awesome it is by leaving a comment so that other improvisers can find us. Robbie, always a great chat, and we will see you next week.
Show me how to fight for now, and I'll tell you, baby, it was easy coming back here to you once I figured it out. You were right here all along, 'cause it's like you're my mirror staring back at me. I couldn't get any bigger with anyone else beside me. Now it's clear as this promise that we're making two reflections into one. 'Cause it's like you're my mirror staring back at me, staring back at me. Aren't you something, an original? 'Cause it doesn't seem merely as simple, and I can't help but stare, 'cause I see truth somewhere in your eyes. I can't ever change without you. You reflect me, I love that about you. And if I could, I would look at us all the time. 'Cause with your hand in my hand and a pocket full of soap, I can tell you there's no place we couldn't go. Just put your hand on the glass, I'll be trying to pull you through. You just gotta be strong, 'cause I don't wanna lose you now. I'm looking right at the other half of me. The vacancy that's out of my heart is a space, and now you're home. Show me how to fight for now, and I'll tell you, baby, it was easy coming back here to you once I figured it out. You were right here all along, 'cause it's like you're my mirror staring back at me. I couldn't get any bigger with anyone else beside me. And now it's clear as this promise that we're making two reflections into one. 'Cause it's like you're my mirror staring back at me, staring back at me. Yesterday's history, tomorrow's a mystery. I can see you looking back at me. Keep your eyes on me, baby, keep your eyes on me. 'Cause it's like you're my mirror staring back at me. I couldn't get any bigger with anyone else beside me. And now it's clear as this promise that we're making two reflections into one. 'Cause it's like you're my mirror staring back at me, staring back at me.